Today I'm going to show you how to make these flowers using tulle and a very common technique known as picot points. For this project you are going to need 1/4 of a yard of tulle, scissors. I would highly recommend a cutting mat with a rotary blade and a ruler. You're going to need a sewing machine as well as matching thread that coordinates with your tulle. The first thing I would do would be to iron out your tulle to get the wrinkles out. To do this, you want to make sure that your iron is on the lowest setting possible. You don't need a lot of heat. You don't want to melt your tulle. So make sure it's just on a really low setting and just lightly go over it to get the wrinkles out. Just do this until you've ironed the whole piece. I'm going to actually cut off both ends just to make sure that it's really straight on both sides.
Put that down. Just leave your hands there for a second.
Again, I'm going to cut the tulle so that it's 8 inches wide. Now that I've cut it and it's 8 inches wide, I'm going to iron it in half, long ways. And again, you want to make sure that your iron is on a very low setting. Now that I have ironed it in half, you don't necessarily have to iron it. I like to do that just so that I can see where my center line is. But now that I've ironed it, using my rotary blade and my ruler, I'm going to cut 4 inches over from the end, and I'm going to cut just to the center line. I'm going to do that all the way down one side. So again, your squares that you're cutting are going to be 4 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to do that all the way down this side. On this side, I'm going to start by cutting over 2 inches. And the same thing, 4 inches up. This way my squares are going to be staggered. So now that I've cut the first one, I'm now going to cut over 4 inches so that my squares are again 4 inches by 4 inches, but they're staggered on each side. So now I have a square here and I have a square here. You're going to do that all the way down both ends until you get to the end. This 2 inch by 4 inch piece section, you're actually going to just cut it off. I have finished cutting my 4 inch blocks all the way down both sides of the tulle, and as you can see at the end, I ended up with 2 pieces that are not 4 inches by 4 inches. So I am going to cut them off. You want to make sure that all of your blocks are 4 by 4. So this is what it looks like when it's done. Now you are going to start turning your squares into picot points. And to do this, you're going to start with the one on the very end. And you're going to fold it in half this way and in half again so that it turns into a triangle. You want to make sure that you fold them all the same direction, and as you go you're going to pin them so that they stay in place. Now that I've done this one, I'm going to do the one underneath it. Again, you want to make sure that the open side is all going in the same direction. You're going to fold it up, and what you're going to actually do is take the open part and you're going, the one that's in front of it, you want it to actually be inside the one next to it. And then you pin it. You're just going to continue the same process all the way till you get to the very end. Now that I've made all of the picot folds, this is what it'll look like when you're finished. I'm going to take the two ends and intertwine them like I've done with the rest. So now I have just one continuous circle of picot points. And next I'm going to be using my sewing machine. Alright, next step we're going to do is to gather our picot points. You can use any method of gathering you choose. I'm going to show you how I do it using a zigzag stitch and some crochet thread. I'm going to line the crochet thread along the bottom of my picot points, and I'm going to do a zigzag stitch over the top of it. So instead of pulling my thread when I gather it, I'm actually going to pull my crochet thread instead. It's just stronger and it won't tear through my tool. So you're going to just do this all the way around. And I go in about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. You're just going to zigzag right over the top of your crochet thread, and take your time. You don't have to rush, just to make sure that you get it lined up. And you're going to just do this all the way until you meet at the other side where you started. So now I've gone all the way around and I've reached the other side. I'm just going to stitch to the very end so that they're close together. Take all your pins out. Cut off any extra threads that are hanging. Then you're going to take your 2 pieces of crochet thread and you're just going to start pulling on them together. And it might take a little bit to do this. Just go slow and careful so that you don't tear the tool. After you've gathered it as tight as it can go, you're going to just tie your 2 strings together like I did here. So it's not going to be completely tight. So what you're going to need to do is take some of your thread and a needle. Fold your thread in half just to make it stronger. It might be hard to see this because my thread is the same color as my tool. But you're just going to kind of weave your thread. I'm going to tie this end off first. Then you're just going to kind of go around your flower, weaving your needle and your thread in and out. And this is going to just tighten it up even more as you go. And you're just going to do this all the way around until the flower is totally tight. So now I've gone around the center of the flower, weaving the thread in and out and tightened it even more. So now there's a smaller hole in the center. With my thread still in the flower, I'm going to close the gap by stitching across and pulling tight. And I'm just going to do this a couple times. After I've done that, your flower will look something like this when it's finished. Okay, so now that my flower is totally sewn together, I'm going to add a button to the center of my flower. So all you're going to do is just sew the button on, and then your flower will be finished. You can add it to a headband, you can add it to a hair clip, anything that you would like. So I've added the button to the center of the flower, and now it's finished. For tips on this project and other projects, please visit my blog at www.wordswithstyle.blogspot.com. Thank you.